Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the vodcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Hello, FiST Chat fans. It's nice to be back for another week.
Absolutely, to talk monsters.
Monsters.
I think it's because Pacific Rim was coming out this week and we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. It got me interested in the topic in general. But before we get into that, don't forget our website, FiSTChat.com. You can get all our links there. You can subscribe to our audio via iTunes, SoundCloud and our RSS feed, our videos on YouTube, Vimeo and Digicosm TV. You can follow us on social media, Twitter, Google Plus and Facebook. Love to hear from you. We've got our ebook, The FiST Report, at fistreport.com. 99 cents, hosted on Amazon. Great read and also helps to support the show. And we've also got our supplementary content, weekly blogs, photography on Instagram and Flickr, and recommend us to anyone who you think may be interested in our positively enthralling discussions in film, science and technology every week. Now, we're going to be talking about the science of monsters today, and this was a rather curious opinion piece we saw on the ABC. And Matt Kaplan, who wrote this piece, was basically saying, why do we love scary stories and by extension monsters? And it really comes down to that innate sort of, what would you call it, evolutionary thing that about survival, right? It's that flight or fight thing or whatever it is, that we flee from danger and we flee from things that we don't understand. But at the same time, there's a group of us or certain percentage of us that don't mind putting our hand in the fire, so to speak, in terms
Thrill
of...
seekers, Ben.
That's right. The curiosity of taking a risk and which ultimately will help benefit everyone. In terms of if they are successful, then they come out with more knowledge or a better experience or whatever as it goes. I thought this was quite interesting. He was referring to, he started talking about the Minotaur and then the alien from Ridley Scott's film and sort of went from there, vampires and whatever else. Not really, there's a real interesting fascination with this sort of topic, and it was good to see how he sort of tied it back to a scientific perspective as to where it all came from.
Yeah, it's a very interesting article, and no doubt, as you've pointed out with those examples, monsters change. So they tend to be fashionable. In terms of which monsters we're scared of. And then, of course, sometimes you can get complete turnarounds. So, for instance, back in probably about 100 years ago, vampires were big and werewolves were big. And they were awful, nasty, vicious monsters that we were all afraid of. But, of course, today, in the last few years, thanks to the Twilight series, they're wonderful monsters.
Yeah, you want to fall in love with them, don't you?
You do. So... But getting back more on the fear factor, it is very interesting that I guess Buddhist philosophy says that the greatest monsters or fears that we face are those of our own making, and I think if you look historically at the monsters that we've been afraid of, they are representative of people's fears. So in the 60s, a lot of the Japanese monster movies. Godzilla and the like, all mutants due to radiation, which at the time people were very scared of nuclear war and nuclear bombs and, Toxic Avenger at the height of, the fears of people, of toxicity in the environment. We go back to, Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, that, somewhere in that crazy castle up on the hill, there's something out there stalking the village. So it is very interesting how we manifest what are our fears and the fears of the environment around us into I guess, something there like the haunted little house in the woods.
And it's sort of a cathartic, expression of of that fear that we're able to, I don't know, I guess, devise these scenarios where we can experience this fear, but in complete safety.
Well, that's right, and I think that's the beauty of Hollywood. Really, I mean, whether you're terrified or whether you're ready for the fight, whether you want to run away or get stuck into a fight with these monsters, it's that thrill, it's that adrenaline rush, and that's why Hollywood has played so well in the horror sort of monster saga.
Yeah, absolutely. One interesting thing in the opinion piece was that he was likening our sort of fascination and fear with monsters with the way people react to spicy foods. Now, you like a bit of spice, don't you? The idea that a dish that's searingly hot. There's no logical reason why anyone would enjoy having such a hot food. Like he's mentioning, food from like Mexico or India. A lot of people do avoid them, but there are many people that love them precisely because they're so fiery, and yeah, it might defy logic, but there's something about the painful experience that's either cathartic or pleasurable. What do you think about about that?
Well, metabolically, okay, if you do have a really hot and spicy food or meal, as people would know, you break into a sweat. It's effectively raising your metabolic rate. They've done tests up to 25 to 30%. So, it can be like going for a 20-minute jog, sitting there and eating. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're burning off the calories, but you are burning off energy when you sweat like that. It is a release of tension. It does get endorphins going, and it has a very spicy foods are actually addictive as well. That's one thing people don't realise. So if you enjoy a bit of spice, it's no different to cracking a can of your favourite soft drink, which might have some caffeine in it, as well as sugar and some bubbles, and downing that every day at a certain time, because you get used to it. You get used to the kick, and spicy foods do the same thing. The thing is, spicy foods take it to a whole new level where you're highly aware of the fact that you've ingested something that has changed your metabolism. And as you say, it's kind of cathartic. Yeah. And because of that, people enjoy it and seek it constantly.
Yeah. Exactly. And one other idea, just wanted to cover too, this idea of the risk taker. Daring animals that find resources by taking risks. It's logical to assume that most adventurous humans have historically made similar sorts of gains by taking risks. Now, and then he goes on to say monsters may be serving a valuable purpose in society in this regard, in the sense that it was out of that fear that we were then able to sort of manifest that into a positive thrust forward in terms of what we know, what we discovered, and that sort of thing. So in that sense, monsters are a sort of a figure of a symbol of our innate fears and where we came from, because when we were, as humans, when we were developing, something out there could eat us at any time, and obviously that doesn't exist in our world today, not at least on any grand scale. I'm sure if we went swimming in the ocean off Port Lincoln or something, a great white shark might have something to say about it. But outside of that sort of a scenario,
the monsters of the deep.
Yeah, but outside of that sort of scenario, we're not really faced with that on a day-to-day basis.
That's right.
So where does that sit? Is that why it's important that we keep going back to this sort of thing? Is that because we've got it's so built into us biologically, psychologically, and whatever, that we need to have these releases for this reason, because they don't really exist today?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, are we at a point now where we're leaving that behind? Or are we going to synthesize it? So are we going to play video games that will give us those rushes? It is very interesting. We are becoming more and more urbanized, so there aren't really any monsters anymore, because there aren't any haunted houses anymore, in the same way as there's no fairies or pixies living at the bottom of the garden because we don't have gardens. So, that is a very interesting evolutionary facet for us, because we've used our imaginations in the past to create monsters. So my guess is we're going to create new monsters, new things to be afraid of, in kind of a high-tech world. So whether it's somebody staring at you with Google Glass on, or whether it's, robots are going to be the next monsters, I would suspect. I don't know, but it's very interesting. I don't know, as we move ourselves more and more from the danger that we'd find in the wild, we are going to either lose that sense of fear or whatever it is that drives us, or thrill that drives us, or we will replace it with something synthetic.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we might draw a line under that and move on to our news bites now. Start with our film one, Cheap and Cheerful, the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival. And this was cool, from theeconomist.com. As Francophiles have Kern, Central and Eastern European cinema connoisseurs have Karlovy Vary, an international film festival that has just wrapped its 48th year, which, Cairns done about 60 odd now. So that's a fairly long time for a festival to be running. And from the sounds of it, it's still sort of really like the way a festival should be. You get your occasional celebrities going there. I think they were mentioning John Travolta went there at some stage. And it's had a checkered history through, the Soviet Union time and all of that. I was just thinking, instead of going to Cannes all those years, maybe we should have been heading off to Eastern Europe and having a bit of fun there.
Ben, I think going to any film festival where Hollywood's not involved sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, the idea that it's not taken over by a big business interest is always a good thing.
Yeah, and just on that, put in a big plug for anyone in Australia or even internationally. If you want to get along to a great film festival, go to the Byron Bay Film Festival in March every year. Run by great people, real community stuff, great films, really good atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, our science news bite, and this one has been a bit of a concern in Australia for a long time now, but it's sort of coming at a zenith with matters that are happening in the international court. Our Attorney General has accused Japan of commercial whaling dressed up as science. Now, this sort of stoush, if you like, has been going on for some time, but it's really sort of being featured in the news quite a bit recently, and I'm sure Japanese news coverage, if we saw that, would probably be covering it to the hilt as well. The thing that only struck me, and I guess I'm throwing my opinion in here, is that when I saw some footage of the testimony offered by the Japanese side about how they somehow the maintaining the sustainability of the marine environment and they didn't mention whales once, and it just felt like they were going with their spin as to get them to keep doing it. Is this a sort of a nebulous area where you're trying to use, the guise of science to, be hiding something else, perhaps?
Oh, I don't want to start a diplomatic incident, but I would suspect that really, I don't think they can defend it as being scientific. It's undoubtedly whaling, and they're hiding behind that. Yeah, I think the thing is that for whaling, it's a barbaric practice. The way they cull the whales for scientific research, but the truth is that is it any more barbaric than what the rest of us are doing who eat meat at home? There'd be some people who'd probably argue that was just as bad. I don't really know where to go on it, to be honest. Australia is definitely opposed to whaling. Certainly, whales have been hunted to the point of extinction.
Yeah, is that maybe the point, that it's to the point of extinction?
It is to the point of extinction, but I think the Japanese could quite rightly argue that through their scientific research, they're maintaining a quota for the number of whales they're catching. It's all above board in terms of Japanese regulation of how many whales they're catching. So if you overlook the barbaric nature of the practice, it may be argued that, yes, they are engaged in science and that they're actually regulating something very carefully and in a very good and consistent manner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think it's anywhere I can buy in on. I wouldn't want to buy in on it, but it's an interesting situation because it's two different cultures pitted against each other, two very different viewpoints on what's going on.
No, well, I'm sure we'll find out what will happen in the coming weeks, and if this particular international court has any teeth, regardless of which way whichever way they find. Whether they'll back the Japanese up or they'll back the Australians up based on whichever side that they see is winning the argument.
Well, exactly. I mean, I wouldn't want to be on that international court having to make a decision.
No, absolutely. All right, and just finally, our tech news bite from the Brisbane Times. Technology harming family life, blame the parents. And I'll just read out this little piece at the beginning. It was written by Joanne Orlando, and she was saying that I was out with my children last week and couldn't help but smile as the voice of a toddler on a swing called out higher and higher. Normally a scene like this would conjure up images of a mother and child laughing and bonding together, but as we live in the internet age, it wasn't so idealistic. As it turned out, Mum was so engrossed with an online conversation on her mobile that she didn't even notice her young son calling out for attention. Needless to say, he never did get that higher push, and he ended up playing on the slide where he didn't need his mum to have fun. That's a bit harsh, but almost, an extreme sort of picture of some of the negative consequences of excessive social media or mobile device use that we're seeing every day. People walking down the street, texting, posting updates while they're walking along the street, that kind of thing.
Polls.
Yep, I mean we've mentioned it before. I mean, this is just another example of maybe as a warning as to not letting these sorts of things take over your everyday life.
Well, I mean, let's just face it. If she had Google Glass on, she would have been able to do both at once.
Is that your advocacy of Google Glass? Is it?
Well, as I've said before, and we've both discussed, I find Google Glass to be very interesting because for a number of reasons, with regard to social acceptance, but it is very easy to get caught up in the connectivity that we have today, in the fact that we carry around mobile units that just these devices just keep us connected, and we can talk to people that aren't there. Once upon a time, you just had to make do with the people you had around you. Now, you talk to anyone you want, anytime.
And maybe it's just you use your device when you need to use that device for a reason. Otherwise, you might be missing out on life. Whether it's like she was suggesting there, you're missing important moments in your child's life and growing up, or it could be even something as simple as not enjoying a meal at a restaurant because you're too busy taking snaps and uploading it to Facebook, and then people liking it and commenting on how great a time and what great food you're eating.
That's right. So, but if generational change comes through and everyone's doing that, so that kid will probably grow up, you would imagine, in that environment and then do the same things. So if everyone's doing the same thing, maybe it won't matter.
All right, well, we'll see. We'll come back to it in 30 years when we're on FiST Chat 2063 or something.
Very sad story, Ben, I reckon. But we'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. All right, we might wrap it up there. So thanks again, Steve, for the chat.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ben. Tweet us if you're too busy to talk to your child because you're using social media.
But you can talk to us. That's okay.
That's right.
All right. So that's it for this episode. So we'll catch you next time.